The bell above the diner door chimed softly as Clara wiped her hands on a threadbare apron and forced a smile that had long ago learned how to hide exhaustion. Because smiling was cheaper than hope and easier than explaining why her feet hurt, why her eyes burned, why every shift felt like a quiet negotiation between dignity and survival. And when the man walked in that night, tailored coat, calm stride, eyes that measured the room like a balance sheet, she noticed him the way waitresses always notice. People who don't look like they belong to laminated menus and flickering lights. But she didn't know then that this was the moment her life tilted, only that he chose the corner booth, ordered black coffee and the cheapest steak, spoke politely without warmth, and never once looked at his phone, while Clara refilled his cup with shaking hands because her daughter, Lily's asthma medicine, was due in 2 days, and the pharmacy had already warned her they wouldn't wait again. And the man ate slowly, deliberately, as if time bowed to him. And when he asked for the check, his voice was calm, almost gentle, and Clara felt a flicker of relief, because gentle customers rarely cause trouble. But relief turned to ice when she picked up the receipt and saw the total neatly paid to the cent, and beneath it, where hope usually lived, a bold, undeniable zero. And it felt personal even though she knew it wasn't, because a zero tip always feels like a verdict, a quiet sentence passed on your worth. And she stood there for a second longer than she should have, cheeks burning, thinking of Lily's inhaler, of the rent notice folded in her purse, of the way the manager's eyes narrowed when tips were low, and she forced herself to nod and say thank you, because pride doesn't pay bills. And as the man stood to leave, she noticed his eyes soften just a fraction, as if he wanted to say something but chose silence instead. And he walked out into the cold night without looking back, leaving behind a table that felt heavier than it should have. And when Clara reached to clear the plates, her fingers brushed something stiff beneath the dinner plate, something that didn't belong, and her breath caught because diners don't leave surprises unless they mean them. And she slid the plate aside slowly, almost afraid, revealing a folded envelope thick enough to make her heart pound. And inside, written in steady ink on a single card, were words that made the room spin. For the nights you think no one sees you, open after closing, and tucked beneath. The card was a cashier's check with more zeros than she had ever seen in her life, an amount so large her knees buckled and she had to grip the table to stay upright. Because this wasn't kindness, this was intervention. This was destiny knocking with quiet knuckles. And suddenly, the zero tip made sense. Not an insult, but a test. A moment designed to reveal who she was when she thought no one was watching. And as the bell chimed again and another, customer walked in complaining about the cold. Clara carefully slid the envelope into her apron, heart racing, unaware that the man who had just left was already sitting in a car across the street, watching through the fog glass, not to spy but to witness. Because wealth had taught him that money reveals character faster than hunger ever could. And tonight he wasn't searching for gratitude, he was searching for proof. Proof that decency still existed in a world that tried daily to grind it down. And Clara returned to work with tears threatening to fall, serving fries and smiles and apologies, counting minutes until closing, counting breaths until she could sit alone and open the envelope properly, while the diner hummed with ordinary noise, completely unaware that under its flickering lights, 2 lives had just collided. And if this story has already pulled it, something inside you, if you believe moments like this can change everything, then stay with this channel, subscribe, because what Clara discovers after closing doesn't just alter her future. It exposes a truth about power, kindness, and worth that no amount of money can buy. And this is only the beginning. After closing, when the last chair was flipped onto the table, and the diner fell into a silence that felt almost sacred, Clara locked the door with hands that trembled so badly she had to try twice, the envelope burning against her apron like it was alive. And she sat alone in the booth where everything had changed, the same booth that had hosted 1,000 forgettable meals and one unforgettable moment. And she breathed deeply before opening the envelope because some part of her feared it might disappear if she moved too fast, like a dream that dissolves under daylight. But it didn't vanish, it became more real, because inside was a cashier's check made out in her name, her full name, perfectly spelled, and the amount was enough to erase every fear she had been carrying for years, enough to pay rent for months, to clear medical bills, to buy Lily the pink bicycle she pointed at every time they passed the toy store. And tucked behind the check was another letter, longer this time, written not with arrogance but with precision, explaining that the man she served was indeed a billionaire, someone who had learned the hard way that money attracts performance, not character, and that he had made it a quiet habit to test humanity in places where people rarely expect it, leaving zero on the receipt, not to punish, but to observe, to see whether resentment or grace followed disappointment. And he wrote that he had watched her thank him anyway, watched her clear the table without slamming plates or muttering curses, watched her do her job with dignity when she believed she had been insulted. And that was why the envelope existed, because what she didn't know was that he was searching for someone to fund, not as a charity case, but as a partner, someone who understood struggle, honesty, and restraint. And as Clara read, tears blurred the words, because she realized this wasn't just money, it was trust, something she hadn't been offered in a very long time. And the letter ended with an invitation to meet the next morning at an address that looked more like a tower than an office, and a final line that stayed with her long after she folded the paper.